Every room has a person who speaks with complete confidence. Everyone listens. Everyone assumes that person holds the advantage. Yet the surprising truth is that confidence alone rarely decides who truly comes out ahead. The people who quietly shape conversations, influence decisions, and avoid becoming targets usually follow a different set of rules. They understand something deeper about human behavior. They know that the greatest advantage rarely comes from talking more, reacting faster, or proving intelligence at every opportunity. It comes from understanding the hidden patterns that guide people's choices before those people even recognize those patterns themselves. That is why brilliant people sometimes lose to someone who simply knows how to stay calm, observe carefully, and move with purpose. Intelligence is powerful, but intelligence without emotional control can become surprisingly easy to predict. Once someone can predict your reactions, they can begin guiding your decisions without you realizing it. Every conversation reveals clues. Every emotional reaction gives away valuable information. Every rushed decision leaves a small opening that someone else can quietly use. Human psychology works beneath the surface far more often than people notice. A slight change in tone, a pause before answering, a carefully chosen question, or perfect silence at the right moment can completely change the direction of an interaction. These subtle moments usually pass unnoticed, yet they shape relationships, negotiations, friendships, workplaces, and even everyday conversations. People often search for clever tricks while overlooking the deeper principles that quietly influence every social situation. In this video, you will discover 5 powerful psychological rules that help you think more strategically, remain calm under pressure, and make stronger decisions when emotions begin pulling everyone else in the wrong direction. Each rule builds on the one before it, creating a complete way of approaching difficult people and challenging situations with greater awareness. You will learn why emotional reactions instantly make a person easier to read, why calm individuals consistently notice details that others completely miss, and why impulsive actions create opportunities for manipulation. You will also discover why true emotional discipline often appears as natural confidence, even though its real source is far deeper than confidence itself. As the video continues, these ideas become even more powerful. Every rule connects with the next, revealing a pattern that most people never fully recognize. Small changes in the way you observe, respond, and think can completely reshape the way people respond to you. By the time you reach the final rule, you will understand the quiet principle that brings every lesson together and explains why the strongest position in any situation usually belongs to the person who appears to do the least while understanding the most. This journey is about developing awareness, strengthening self-control, and learning practical psychological principles that can improve everyday interactions in ways that are both subtle and effective. Stay with us until the very end, because the final lesson quietly transforms the meaning of every rule you hear before it. Welcome to our channel. If you enjoy exploring psychology, human behavior, and practical strategies for thinking smarter, subscribe now and join us for more videos that help you understand the hidden forces shaping every conversation and every decision. The first rule begins with a lesson that feels almost too simple, yet it separates people who stay in control from those who constantly lose their advantage. Before you can influence any situation, you must first influence yourself. Every emotional reaction sends information to the people around you. Frustration changes your voice. Anger changes your body language. Fear changes your decisions. Excitement can even cause you to reveal plans before the right moment. These reactions happen so quickly that most people never realize how much they communicate without speaking directly. Someone paying close attention can often predict your next move simply by watching how you respond when pressure appears. This is why emotional self-regulation is one of the most valuable psychological skills. It reduces the amount of information you accidentally give away, while allowing you to think with greater clarity. People often believe that quick reactions show strength, yet the opposite is frequently true. When emotions take control, decisions become easier to anticipate. Someone who becomes angry after criticism will almost always defend themselves immediately. Someone who feels ignored may try harder to gain attention. Someone driven by fear may accept a poor decision simply to escape discomfort. These patterns repeat because human emotions follow familiar paths. Skilled negotiators, experienced leaders, and even everyday manipulators understand this reality. They recognize emotional triggers and sometimes use them to push others toward predictable choices. The moment someone can reliably predict your behavior, they gain an advantage before the conversation has even finished. Calm people experience the same emotions as everyone else, yet they create a small space between feeling and responding. That brief pause changes everything. Instead of focusing only on their own emotions, they begin noticing details that others completely overlook. They hear changes in someone's tone of voice. They recognize hesitation before an answer. They notice contradictions between words and actions. They see who grows uncomfortable during silence and who becomes impatient when conversations slow down. These observations provide valuable information because people reveal themselves most clearly when they believe everyone is focused somewhere else. Emotional control sharpens awareness, while emotional overload narrows attention until only the strongest feeling remains. Impulsive decisions create another hidden danger. Under pressure, people often rush toward immediate relief instead of long-term success. They interrupt before hearing the full story. They argue before understanding the other person's goal. They reveal private information simply to defend themselves. Each rushed choice creates another opportunity for someone else to guide the conversation in a direction they prefer. Emotional discipline prevents these unnecessary mistakes. Interestingly, people often mistake the quiet discipline for confidence. They assume calm individuals simply believe in themselves more. The deeper truth is that their greatest strength comes from remaining steady while everyone else reacts. Once you develop that steady control over your own emotions, your attention naturally shifts outward, allowing you to understand the thoughts, motives, and behavior of everyone around you with far greater accuracy. The second rule begins with a shift that changes the way you see every conversation. Most people pay close attention to words because words are easy to hear. They listen to promises, explanations, excuses, and confident statements, then build opinions from those pieces alone. Yet human behavior follows a deeper pattern. Words can be carefully chosen, delayed, or completely invented to create a certain impression. Actions require decisions, effort, and consistency. That is why behavior usually tells a more accurate story than speech. Someone may promise loyalty while repeatedly disappearing when responsibility appears. Another person may claim honesty yet avoid simple questions that require direct answers. A leader may speak about teamwork while taking every opportunity to collect personal credit. These differences reveal something important. People rarely become defined by their best speech. They become defined by the choices they repeat over time. Once you begin watching behavior, instead of becoming distracted by impressive language, hidden patterns slowly become possible to ignore. Every action grows from a motivation, even when the person carrying it out cannot clearly explain it. Human psychology is filled with invisible forces that shape decisions long before logic enters the picture. One of the strongest motivations is the desire for approval. Some people constantly seek recognition because praise gives them a temporary feeling of value. They may agree with everyone, avoid disagreement, or constantly search for compliments. Their decisions revolve around maintaining acceptance rather than expressing genuine beliefs. Another powerful motivation is status. For some individuals, every conversation quietly becomes a competition. They want to appear more intelligent, more successful, or more influential than those around them. They interrupt, exaggerate achievements, or dismiss other opinions because protecting their position matters more than discovering the truth. Security is another hidden force that quietly shapes behavior. A person who values stability may resist change even when better opportunities appear. They choose familiar routines because certainty feels safer than growth. During difficult conversations, they may avoid difficult decisions simply because uncertainty creates discomfort. On the surface, this behavior may appear cautious or thoughtful. Underneath, the real motivation is preserving emotional safety. Then there is the desire for control. Some people feel calm only when they direct every situation. They may decide where conversations go, influence group decisions, or become uncomfortable whenever events move beyond their influence. Their behavior is driven by reducing uncertainty rather than seeking cooperation. Once these motivations become visible, conversations begin making much more sense because actions start matching the emotional needs hidden beneath them. People often believe behavior changes randomly from one day to the next, yet lasting patterns usually develop through repetition. A single mistake reveals very little. A repeated habit reveals character. Someone who consistently arrives late communicates something very different from someone delayed once because of unexpected circumstances. A person who repeatedly avoids responsibility creates a pattern that eventually becomes predictable. Another individual who quietly keeps promises, even when nobody is watching, also creates a reliable pattern. These repeated behaviors provide valuable information because they reduce uncertainty. Skilled observers understand that habits eventually become stronger than intentions. Temporary emotions come and go, yet repeated choices gradually become part of someone's identity. This is why experienced psychologists, investigators, negotiators, and successful leaders rarely form opinions after one conversation. They wait. They compare present behavior with previous behavior. They notice whether someone reacts the same way whenever pressure appears. They observe how a person treats strangers compared with close friends. They notice whether kindness disappears whenever personal gain enters the situation. These repeated observations create a much clearer picture than isolated events ever could. One dramatic moment can mislead almost anyone. Consistent behavior across different situations is much harder to fake. Another reason repeated habits matter is because people naturally return to familiar emotional patterns during stress. Someone who usually becomes defensive will probably become defensive again when challenged. Someone who avoids accountability will often search for another excuse during the next difficult situation. Someone who responds with patience during conflict usually demonstrates that same patience even when pressure increases. Emotional pressure does not suddenly create character. It often exposes habits that already exist beneath the surface. This makes behavioral patterns one of the strongest tools for understanding people without relying solely on their own descriptions of themselves. Learning to observe this way also requires patience. People sometimes become fascinated by dramatic moments because they seem meaningful. A loud argument, an emotional apology, or a bold promise captures attention immediately. Yet these moments can distract from the quieter behaviors that reveal much more. Daily routines, repeated reactions, consistent choices, and small decisions often carry greater psychological value than dramatic events. Someone can deliver a perfect speech once. Living according to those words every day requires something entirely different. As your attention gradually shifts from promises to patterns, you begin collecting information that most people never notice. You stop reacting to appearances alone and begin recognizing the motivations quietly guiding behavior beneath the surface. Every repeated choice becomes another clue. Every consistent habit adds another piece to the larger picture. Understanding those hidden motives gives you valuable insight into how people think, why they act as they do, and which behaviors are likely to appear again. That knowledge becomes even more powerful when combined with careful timing, because understanding someone's motivations gives you information, and knowing exactly when to use that information becomes an entirely different skill. The third rule feels almost unnatural in a world where everyone is encouraged to speak quickly, defend every opinion, and fill every quiet moment with words. Yet some of the strongest observers follow a completely different approach. They understand that every conversation contains an invisible exchange of information. Every sentence you speak reveals something about your thoughts, emotions, priorities, and intentions. Every sentence the other person speaks does the same. The difference is that people usually pay far more attention to expressing themselves than studying the person in front of them. This creates an imbalance that psychologists often describe as information asymmetry. One person is collecting information while the other is giving it away. The individual who understands more about the situation usually gains the clearer perspective, simply because they possess details the other side has not yet noticed. People naturally enjoy talking about themselves. Research in psychology suggests that sharing personal thoughts and experiences activates reward systems in the brain, making conversation feel satisfying even when people reveal more than they originally planned. A simple question followed by genuine attention often encourages someone to continue speaking. They begin with safe details, then gradually move into personal opinions, frustrations, ambitions, fears, and expectations. They may explain why they made certain decisions, describe people they admire, or complain about situations that continue bothering them. Each statement provides another piece of information. Very few people realize how much they reveal when they feel listened to, instead of challenged. They become comfortable, and comfort lowers their guard more effectively than direct questioning ever could. Thoughtful silence plays a powerful role in this process. Silence often makes people slightly uncomfortable because they expect conversations to move continuously. When a pause appears after someone finishes speaking, the natural impulse is to keep talking. They clarify their previous statement, add extra details, or explain their reasoning further. Those additional comments frequently contain the information they never intended to share at the beginning. Someone may confidently explain a decision, pause for a moment, then suddenly admit the real concern that influenced it. Another person may confidently defend an opinion, only to soften their position after a few seconds of silence because they begin questioning their own certainty. Silence creates room for people to continue revealing themselves without pressure. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. Effective silence is active rather than empty. Calm eye contact, genuine curiosity, and careful attention communicate that you are fully engaged. Instead of preparing your next response while someone else speaks, your attention stays on the details hidden beneath their words. You notice the phrases they repeat several times. You recognize subjects they quickly avoid. You hear changes in tone whenever certain people or situations are mentioned. You observe where confidence suddenly becomes hesitation. These small signals often carry greater meaning than the sentences themselves, because emotions frequently appear before people consciously choose their words. Careful listening also helps separate facts from assumptions. During fast conversations, people often respond before fully understanding what was actually said. They interrupt because they believe they already know the ending. They argue against points that were never made. They defend themselves against criticism that never truly existed. By slowing down and listening completely, you reduce unnecessary misunderstandings while gathering a more accurate picture of the situation. Sometimes the greatest advantage comes from hearing one important detail that everyone else overlooked because they were too focused on speaking. Speaking less also changes how others perceive your presence. People often associate constant talking with confidence, yet psychology shows that confidence is communicated through far more than the number of words someone uses. Individuals who choose their words carefully often appear thoughtful and emotionally steady. Others begin paying closer attention because each statement seems intentional rather than automatic. Instead of filling conversations with endless explanations, they offer clear observations or concise questions that encourage deeper discussion. Their words gain value because they arrive selectively rather than continuously. This creates an interesting psychological effect. People frequently remember brief, well-timed comments longer than lengthy speeches filled with unnecessary detail. Another hidden advantage of speaking less is that it protects your own information. Every unnecessary explanation reveals preferences, emotional triggers, future plans, or personal concerns that someone else may remember later. This does not mean becoming secretive. It means becoming intentional. Before speaking, you begin asking yourself whether your words serve a purpose, or simply satisfy the urge to respond immediately. That small habit gradually changes the entire rhythm of your conversations. You become more aware of timing, more attentive to context, and more selective about the information you choose to share. As this approach becomes natural, conversations start revealing patterns that previously remained invisible. You notice who dominates discussions to gain attention. You recognize who carefully changes topics whenever accountability appears. You begin identifying hidden motivations through repeated language, emotional shifts, and subtle inconsistencies. Every interaction quietly provides another layer of understanding, because observation gradually replaces assumption. Information alone, however, does very little unless it is handled with patience and good judgment. Collecting insight is only the beginning, because information becomes truly valuable only when you know exactly how and when to use it wisely. The fourth rule shifts attention from observing other people to examining the patterns within your own behavior. Every person develops routines because routines make life easier. You wake up at the same time, respond to messages in a familiar way, solve problems using the same methods, and react to pressure with habits that have formed over years. These routines save mental energy, yet they also create something unexpected. They make your future decisions easier to predict. Once someone recognizes your patterns, they no longer need to guess how you will respond. They begin anticipating your choices before you make them. This is why experienced negotiators, skilled competitors, and even manipulative individuals spend so much time studying behavior instead of listening only to words. They understand that repeated actions eventually become a reliable map of future decisions. Predictability becomes especially dangerous during conflict or high-pressure situations. A person who always responds immediately to criticism can be drawn into arguments with very little effort. Someone who always says yes, because they dislike disappointing others, becomes easy to pressure into unwanted commitments. A leader who never changes direction after making a decision may continue following a poor plan simply to appear consistent. These predictable reactions give other people an opportunity to shape outcomes without using force. They simply wait for familiar behavior to appear. Once that behavior begins, the rest of the situation often unfolds exactly as expected. Flexibility interrupts this pattern. Flexible thinkers do not abandon their values or change their personality every day. They simply refuse to let habits make every decision for them. Instead of reacting automatically, they pause long enough to examine the situation from different angles. They ask whether the circumstances have changed, whether new information has appeared, and whether the old response still makes sense. Sometimes they speak immediately because the moment requires direct action. Other times they remain silent because patience creates a better result. Their choices depend on the situation rather than on fixed routines. This makes it much harder for anyone to predict their next move because every decision begins with careful observation instead of automatic habit. People often misunderstand unpredictability. Some believe it means behaving randomly, constantly changing opinions, or making surprising decisions simply to confuse everyone around them. That approach usually creates chaos rather than strength. Random behavior destroys trust because other people never know whether they can rely on you. Strategic unpredictability is completely different. It follows clear principles even though the exact response changes according to the circumstances. Think of a skilled chess player. Their moves may surprise their opponent, yet every move serves a larger plan. The goal is never confusion for its own sake. The goal is choosing the response that creates the strongest position. This difference becomes clear during everyday conversations. Someone asks a difficult question expecting an emotional reaction, because that has happened several times before. Instead, you calmly ask a thoughtful question in return. During a disagreement, another person expects you to defend yourself immediately, because that has always been your habit. Instead, you listen until they finish before responding with a clear and measured answer. In another situation, someone expects quick agreement because you usually avoid conflict. This time you politely decline after carefully considering the request. None of these responses are random. Each one reflects awareness rather than impulse. The pattern others relied upon quietly disappears, forcing them to adjust their own expectations. Thoughtful unpredictability also protects your long-term goals. People sometimes reveal every future plan as soon as excitement appears. They announce each step before taking action, making it easy for critics to discourage them or competitors to prepare their own response. Strategic thinkers often move differently. They focus on progress first and discussion later. Their actions speak before their announcements do. This approach reduces unnecessary interference, because results eventually become more persuasive than promises. It also keeps attention on meaningful progress instead of endless explanation. Another advantage of flexibility is that it encourages continuous learning. Someone trapped inside predictable routines often ignores new information because accepting it would require changing direction. Flexible individuals treat every situation as an opportunity to improve their understanding. They willingly adjust when evidence points toward a better solution. This willingness to adapt strengthens decision-making over time because experience becomes a teacher instead of a burden. Their confidence grows from learning rather than from proving themselves right in every situation. As your decisions become guided by awareness instead of habit, people find it much harder to place you inside simple categories. They can no longer assume your response based on past reactions alone. Every choice becomes intentional, measured, and connected to the reality of the present moment. This creates quiet strength because your behavior reflects thoughtful judgment rather than automatic patterns. The advantage does not come from keeping everyone guessing. It comes from remaining free to choose the response that best serves the situation. That freedom leads to the deepest lesson of all, because the strongest strategy has very little to do with defeating other people and everything to do with mastering yourself first. The fifth rule is the one that quietly separates people who chase small victories from those who create lasting influence. Human nature pulls people toward immediate rewards. Someone challenges your opinion, and the instinct is to defend yourself. Someone questions your ability, and the desire to prove them wrong appears almost instantly. Someone treats you unfairly, and every emotion demands an immediate response. These reactions feel satisfying in the moment because they protect the ego, yet they often come with hidden costs that only become visible later. Every unnecessary argument consumes time, emotional energy, and attention that could have been invested in something far more valuable. People who understand strategy recognize that every disagreement does not deserve their participation. They know that winning a conversation and winning in life are often two completely different goals. Trying to defeat every opposing opinion can slowly weaken your position without you realizing it. Constant arguments create the impression that your emotions are easy to control. People begin learning exactly which subjects trigger you and exactly how to pull your attention away from what truly matters. Instead of directing your own energy, you end up responding to someone else's agenda. This is one reason emotionally intelligent people rarely feel the need to answer every criticism or correct every misunderstanding. They understand silence can sometimes protect their focus better than the perfect response. Their confidence comes from knowing that every challenge does not require an immediate reaction. They choose carefully because they understand that attention is a limited resource. Once it is wasted on pointless conflicts, it cannot be recovered. Patience is often misunderstood as waiting without action, yet strategic patience is something entirely different. It means recognizing the right moment to act, instead of acting simply because emotions demand movement. A skilled investor does not buy or sell because of every small market change. A successful leader does not change direction because of every complaint. A thoughtful negotiator does not reveal every idea during the first few minutes of discussion. They wait, observe, gather information, and allow situations to develop before making decisions. This patience creates better timing, because decisions become based on understanding rather than urgency. The strongest move is frequently the one made after everyone else has rushed into action. Selective action becomes one of the greatest advantages you can develop. Every opportunity that appears attractive is not worth accepting. Every battle that invites your attention is not worth fighting. Emotionally mature people understand that saying yes to one thing often means saying no to something more important. They protect their time with the same care they protect their reputation. They invest energy where meaningful progress is possible, instead of scattering it across endless distractions. This approach creates consistency, because their actions become connected to long-term goals rather than temporary emotions. While others become exhausted by constant conflict, they quietly continue moving toward results that matter. One of the clearest signs of emotional maturity is the ability to choose outcomes over ego. The ego wants recognition, immediate validation, and the satisfaction of being proven right. Long-term thinking asks a different question. Instead of asking who wins this conversation, it asks which decision creates the best future. Sometimes that means allowing another person to believe they have won a small disagreement while you continue working toward a much larger objective. Sometimes it means accepting constructive criticism instead of defending every mistake. Sometimes it means walking away from an argument that offers nothing except wasted energy. These choices require discipline because they place progress above pride. Over time, that discipline creates opportunities that emotional reactions often destroy. Credibility and trust grow through repeated behavior rather than dramatic moments. People remember those who remain fair under pressure, who keep their promises, and who respond thoughtfully even during difficult situations. They become reliable because others know their decisions are guided by principles instead of impulse. This kind of reputation cannot be built overnight. It develops through hundreds of small choices that demonstrate patience, honesty, consistency, and emotional control. Once credibility is established, influence grows naturally because people begin respecting both your judgment and your character. They listen more carefully because experience has taught them that your words usually deserve attention. This final rule quietly strengthens every lesson that came before it. Emotional self-regulation becomes easier when your focus stays on long-term success instead of temporary victories. Understanding people's motivations becomes more valuable because patience allows you to observe those motivations over time instead of reacting immediately. Speaking less and observing more becomes natural because you no longer feel the need to prove yourself during every conversation. Strategic flexibility becomes stronger because your decisions are guided by purpose rather than habit or emotion. Each principle supports the next until they form a complete way of thinking. Instead of chasing control over every person or every situation, you develop something far more powerful. You gain control over your own choices, your own timing, and your own direction, allowing every decision to serve a future that is far greater than the satisfaction of winning a single argument. Real influence has very little to do with power, loud words, or forcing people to follow your lead. It begins with mastering yourself before trying to influence anyone else. Throughout this video, you discovered 5 psychological rules that work together. You learned why controlling your emotions keeps you from becoming predictable, why understanding people's motivations reveals far more than their words, why speaking less and observing more gives you valuable insight, why making thoughtful and flexible decisions keeps others from easily reading your next move, and why focusing on the long game leads to stronger and more lasting results than trying to win every argument. These principles are effective because they are built on awareness rather than intimidation. Emotional control helps you think clearly when others react impulsively. Careful observation allows you to notice details that most people overlook. Patience gives you the advantage of better timing, while thoughtful decisions help you act with purpose instead of emotion. Over time, these habits build something that cannot be forced or demanded: genuine respect and lasting influence. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Which of these 5 rules already comes naturally to you? Which one needs the most work? Small improvements in these areas can completely change the way you handle conversations, relationships, negotiations, and difficult situations. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more psychology insights, human behavior lessons, and practical strategies that help you think smarter and make better decisions. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us which of these 5 rules you believe creates the greatest long-term advantage. We would love to hear your perspective, and we will see you in the next video.